guys, gals, and non-binary pals, GM Potter here, and today we will be going over A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. So this one, I did not have any expectations, really, for it going in. I had read online in reviews that everyone seemed to either absolutely adore this book and the rest of the series, or to be absolutely unimpressed and angry about it. So no one seemed to be on the middle ground. It did come out in 2015. It has a 4.19 on Goodreads. I would give it a 2 stars. So it is to do with fairies, so I've got my ears on today. Part of the reputation this book has is that it is fairy smut, that it's very saucy, very spicy. It's not. Like, there are so many books that are so much better written, that are so much spicier and deservedly spicy. This one, like, it doesn't come out of nowhere, but it also doesn't feel... It feels rushed. Like, it doesn't come out of nowhere, but it feels like we skipped a couple scenes, like the author trashed a couple scenes. It is a Beauty and the Beast retelling with a dash of the Trials of Hercules thrown in at the end for no apparent reason. We have a somewhat small cast of characters that actually matter in this book and feel like they're going to matter in the rest of the series. Our main character is Feyre, which as soon as I saw her name and read the pronunciation, because the author put the pronunciation in the book, which I do appreciate, because I'm like, is it Fairy? Is it Fairy? Is it Feyre? How do you say this name? It's Feyre. I kind of groaned because, oh, she's a human and it's Beauty and the Beast, so she's gonna fall in love with the fairy and her name is Feyre. And it's like, okay. And then we have Tamlin, who is the High Fae, who is our Beast character. We have Lucian, who is Tamlin's best friend. He is also High Fae. And then towards the end of the book, we have Rysand, or Rysand. I've heard it pronounced both ways. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to go with Rysand, who is also a High Fae. And I think he's going to be the love interest in the future books. Like, that's just what I'm getting from it. All of the High Fae are hot. Like, they are conventionally attractive. They're all tall, they're all lean, they're muscular but not too muscular. All of the High Fae women, which we don't meet very many, but there are some, are absolutely gorgeous and sexy and supermodels incarnate, and it's just okay. Like, everybody's hot, everybody's rich, everybody's everything. And then we have Feyre, who is... There's not a lot of description of her. In the first part of the book, she's kind of skin and bone and muscle because her family is starving. True to the original telling of Beauty and the Beast, not so much the Disney version, but the original story, her father risks the family fortune and loses everything, and so his daughters, he has 3 daughters, are forced into poverty. The 2 daughters, the 2 older daughters are just, oh, well, we're gonna get it back, and blah, 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 and, like, very material possessed state of mind kind of characters. And then we have Belle, or in this case Feyre, who is much more, oh, I'm gonna work for my family, I'm gonna work really hard, this is our lot in life, this is what we've got to do, but that doesn't mean that we're stuck. And it's just, there's nothing wrong with a retelling, it's just this one feels... It feels a little too beat for beat, and then, which makes the parts that the author came up with that are original feel out of left field, if that makes sense. Like, instead of doing a loose adaptation and making it loose the whole way through, there are sections of it that are very beat for beat, this is what's going on, which makes the changes she made just feel... They feel off, if that makes sense. So, one day, Feyre is hunting to feed her family. They've got no money, they've got no food, they're all going to starve to death. And she finds a deer. The deer is being stalked by a wolf. She kills the wolf, and after the wolf kills the deer for her, she skins the wolf, sells the sells the pelts from the two animals, dries the meat, and feeds her family. And um, finds out that, hey, in the fairy realm, which is just on the other side of the woods from her village, things aren't going so great. There's fairies coming over the wall, blah blah blah. And um, one like a couple nights after she sells the pelt, this giant beast that's like an amalgamation of different predators comes and breaks down their door and demands to know who's responsible for killing the wolf, because the wolf was actually a fairy in disguise, and which she kind of thought it was, but she killed it anyway. Like, she specifically used ash wood arrow, which is supposed to kill fairies, to kill the wolf. Not because it was her, not only because it was her best arrow, but because it was, if it was a fairy, then she could kill it. So she's got a little bit of a murder complex going on in the beginning of the book, which I like. I like a good anti-hero kind of arc going on. Additionally, the giant beast finds out that it was Feyre who killed him, and says, oh, because of the treaty, I can either kill you or take you off to my lands. And she's like, alright, take me off to your lands, whatever. And they get over the wall, and she's realizes that, oh, it's a fairy, it's a dude. Oh, and he's kind of hot. And it's like, he kidnapped you. Is now really the time to be like, oh, he's hot? But anyway, he takes her to his estate, and he's like, you're not forced here, but if you leave the estate, I can't guarantee your safety. And so she's does all this scheming to find a way to escape. She traps a lesser fairy and finds out that no, she actually can't escape, that in reality there's so much worse things going on, and there's a whole plotting intrigue going on in the background that they're not telling us about, that they can't tell us about in the story. So it is what it is. Eventually, she falls in love with the High Fairy and realizes that, oh, he's not so bad, really. And like, as soon as she falls in love with him, he sends her away for her own safety. And he says, I love you. She's too scared to say it back. She goes back to her family, and her oldest sister knows what's been going on. When he took her, he glamored her family into thinking that the wind broke the door, and that she was going to take care of a sick, wealthy aunt, and then set them up in their own little mansion and made them rich, because of course money solves all ill in this universe, I guess. Did that, but the oldest sister, the glamour didn't work on, and she's like, you were in the fairy realm, weren't you? And she's like, yes, tell me everything. And so they actually bond. They weren't very close before, and so they kind of bond, and she realizes that things aren't going well in the fairy world when she finds out that the fake name she gave to Rysand's character, because he's working for the big bad in the story, when she finds out that the fake name she gave that A, belonged to a real person, which, sloppy, that person and her whole family were murdered, and their house burned to the ground. She's like, oh no, I should go back. Tamlin's in trouble. And it's like, yeah, no shit, he sent you away for your safety. Of course he's in trouble. So she realizes, and she goes back to the fairy realm on her own. Spoilers, if you haven't read it, this is a very popular book series. I imagine most people who are watching this video have read it, but if you haven't and you're still wanting to, spoilers ahead, so feel free to skip ahead a bit. Okay, so she journeys to the fairy realm and finds that his magic mansion has been burned and ransacked, and there's blood and guts everywhere, and she finds one of the servants and who tells her basically that he had a curse on him that was the Beauty and the Beast curse, that if she had just said I love you too before she left, none of this would have happened and everybody would have been fine. But the last petal has fallen, and so now she has to travel to the kingdom under the mountain, where this evil fairy queen is holding court, and she's captured all the high fairy and all the high fairies, and is holding her own little thing, and it's just okay. It feels a little bit East of the Sun and West of the Moon, if you've read that fairy story. It's got a little bit of East of the Sun, West of the Moon, because she didn't fall in love with him, she broke the rules, and now she's got to go save him. So it's a little bit of a Norse fairy tale in there too, which that's one of my favorite fairy tales. That one and the Snow Queen, not Frozen. We don't talk about Frozen, but the Snow Queen are my two favorite fairy stories from when I was a kid. Anyway, she makes it to the kingdom under the mountain. She goes before this evil high fairy whose name is Amarantha, which, okay, the names are kind of dumb. Amarantha, and she bargains for him, and Amarantha's like, fine, I'll free him. I'll free everybody. There's two ways that you can win. You can either solve my magic riddle, or you can solve my 3 trials. At any point you can tell me the answer to the riddle and I'll free everybody instantly. And she's like, okay. So the riddle. The riddle to me, as soon as they said the riddle, I got the answer. Like, let's see if you do too. Tell me in the comments below. There are those who seek me a lifetime, but never we meet, and those I kiss who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. At times I seem to favor the clever and the fair, but I bless all those who are brave enough to dare. By large my ministrations are soft-handed and sweet, but scorn I become a difficult beast to defeat. For though each of my strikes lands a powerful blow, when I kill, I do it slow. It seems pretty obvious to me, or at least it did when I read it, that the answer to the riddle, which I'll get to in due time, think about it, if you haven't gotten it yet, but think about it. It's going to be a head smacker when you get there. So she gets ready to, she's in the dungeon and she gets ready for her 3 trials. The first trial is a trial by combat against a giant worm, Rancor beast from Star Wars style, and she manages to kill it using bones from its previous victims, and she does it all on her own, and they snap her arm in 2 after she wins, the evil fairies do, and so she's in her cell, like, dying of infection, because each of the trials is spaced 1 month apart, and she's in jail, essentially, in between the trials. And so Rysand comes into her cell and he's like, hey, I'll heal you if you agree to come to my court for, I think he says 2 weeks every month at the start, and she whittles him down to 1 week every month. He's like, deal, and he heals her, because she's literally dying of sepsis. And the arm that was broken is, like, all tattooed up in, like, these whorls and, like, sigils and things, and she's now his property, and it's like, ugh, really? Like, really? And she's also got to do chores in between, and it's dumb. The second trial is reading comprehension. Like, she's got to read a little story and then select the right answer. Like, it reminds me of, like, I don't know where y'all are, but I grew up in Texas during TOS test, and it just reminds me of TOS test. Like, we would have these, like, timed, like, read the short story and select the answer, and they'd time us, even though the test itself wasn't timed. It just reminded me of that. But oh no, Feyre can't read, because she's a stupid human. And so her magic tattoo, like, Rysand gives her the answer, she reaches out to pull a lever, and her hand hurts. She's like, oh, it's not that one. She reaches to a different level. Her hand hurts. Not that one. Reaches to the 3rd level. It doesn't hurt, so she pulls it, and it's the right answer. And it's like, you cheated. And then, and in the meantime, now that she's Rysand's property, he, like, parades her in front of Tamlin, who is forced to watch as she gets drunk and, like, sexy dances for him. But she has no memory of this because of the fairy wine, which, again, is so dumb. Then the 3rd trial is just straight up murder. They give her 3 fairies, and they give her 3 ashwood daggers, and she's just gotta kill them in cold blood. And she stabs the first one. And the second one starts praying, and begging her to kill her so that everybody can be free. And so she stabs that one, and she goes to the third one, and she realizes it's Tamlin. She's like, I'm so sorry. She stabs him, but he doesn't die. She just stabs him. And Amarantha basically says, well, I said I'd free you, but I never said when. Ha-cha-cha. I got you. And she's crying. Feyre's crying and telling Tamlin how much she loves him, and then she gets it. The answer to the riddle is love. And immediately Amarantha, who stole all the High Fae's powers, is powerless, or relatively powerless compared to these other High Fae, and they murder her, and somehow in the confusion Feyre's neck gets snapped, and she's like looking down in like an astral form down at all of this as it's happening, and the High Fae come and they like give some of their life essence or something to make her immortal. And so now she's an immortal High Fae too. So the whole forbidden love is like, it's the Beauty and the Beast thing, except they kind of pulled a Shrek. She kind of pulled a Shrek, and it's like, it's not what you're expecting, but it didn't subvert my expectations, because knowing there's more books, like, I think the problem I had with this book is knowing there's more. So I know she's gonna make it, and I know that that's gonna happen. And, like, I know the issue with her being mortal is going to be resolved at some point. It's like, it's just, is it this book or is it the next book where she becomes a fairy? And Tamlin, now free of his bondage and having his full power back, destroys Amarantha, and the two of them are like, let's go home. And it's just 2 stars. 2 stars. Should you read this? I would say no. I would say this one is not worth reading. I'm certainly not going to read it again. This is another one that I'm probably either going to sell off or donate or give away. Something. It's not going to stay in my book collection. Have you read it? What did you think? Did you solve the riddle in time to save Tamlin and the other fairies? Like, tell me what you thought down in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!